welcome to another edition of Metis Warrior here with Timothy and Alexandria.
Hello, everybody.
So today we're going to have a special show for you. We're going to have two candidates on the show. Both of the candidates are running for the same position, Treasurer of the Metis Nation of Saskatchewan.
And today, the first individual we're speaking to is Robert Lafontaine.
And so with Robert, it's a very interesting interview. Definitely you're going to want to hear what he has to say. And again, after his interview, then we will do the interview with the second person,
Melvina Goulet.
And so you're going to want to definitely stick around for that as well, so you can make an accurate determination on which one of these two candidates you would like to be treasurer of the Metis Nation of Saskatchewan. The reason why you need a new treasurer for the Metis Nation of Saskatchewan is because currently there is no transparency within the Metis Nation of Saskatchewan. There's nothing but poisoned people on the board. The entire board has to be replaced. One of the things that's very interesting about the interview with Robert is the fact that he says he believes there's some good people that sits on the board. They just gave in to the peer pressure. Well, I disagree with that. I don't think they're good people that could give in to peer pressure and give themselves pay raises and give themselves bonuses. I disagree with Robert on that end. However, I do think that he will be transparent, just like I think our second guest will be transparent. But I definitely did not appreciate that comment that he made in the interview where he's taken up for some of the people on the board, because you don't give in for peer pressure when you represent your people. You want to do the fair thing. So the entire board as it currently sits has to be replaced. There's nothing but corruption, and by saying that, there's no transparency. So that is corrupt. You should be transparent to the people that you are representing. You're not leading them. The federal government does not give the Metis Nation of Saskatchewan money to personally benefit the people that sit on the board. This money is supposed to go to the Metis citizens in Saskatchewan. The people in Saskatchewan, the Metis people, have been screwed over enough by the current board. It's time for change.
And the Metis Nation of Saskatchewan, as it currently sits, has forgot the key point. They're there to serve the Metis people in Saskatchewan, not to serve themselves or line their pocketbooks, folks.
Yeah, and so go ahead and take a listen to the interview with Robert. And again, discuss me the one comment about, they just gave in to some peer pressure. It was very hard for them to watch other people screw the Metis, and then they also wanted to screw the Metis too, but yet they're good people. But that's a bunch of BS. But again, I do feel like he is a good candidate for treasurer, even though I disagree with that one statement.
Right. We're here with Robert Lafontaine, who is currently running for treasurer of Metis Nation of Saskatchewan. The elections are May 29th, 2021.
And welcome to the show, Robert.
Hey, thank you.
And so I want to start off the interview with you by asking you a question. And the question is, when it comes to financials for the Metis citizens of Saskatchewan, do you think it's important to have 100% transparency, or do you think there is some need for some gray areas and black areas in the financials?
I think there is a need for 100% transparency. I think Métis citizens need to know the money that is coming in and how that money is being spent.
Yes, exactly. And that's been a huge problem, as we know, under the reign of the dictator called McCollum, that we can speak personally for ourselves as citizens. For Saskatchewan has reached out to us numerous times, and we've tried to contact the Metis Nation of Saskatchewan, and we've gotten zero information back. And we made it clear that we were contacting M&S because there were citizen concerns, and there has been no transparency. So it's time to get some transparency in there. And when the government gives when the federal government gives these Métis organizations, not just in Saskatchewan but all across Canada, when these organizations get money and funding, this money is for the Métis that's the members of these organizations, and they have every right to know what the money's being spent on.
Well, Timothy, I have over 20 years in financial administration. I've worked the last 6 years at the Provincial Métis Housing Corporation. I've developed different types of programming, including the first-time home buyers program that Medco has been administering, and the MS Emergency Home Renovations and Repair program. In Yorkton, when I was an area director between 2007 and 2012, we built a small housing project, two duplexes. It's something where I like to get things done, but I'm also quite aware that we need to provide accountability and transparency to our citizens.
Yes, and we agree with that. And and you know, that's what we need. We having problems with the board right now, and I do know that, you know, that I feel the amount of money that they decided to give themselves a pay raise to is absolutely absurd. And I think that from our understanding is when they did this, they were actually in a deficit. And so I don't understand how they could justify doing this in a deficit. But, you know, and I guess when it comes to money, money has a funny way of changing people. But as you said, you are very qualified for the position, and there's no disputing that. We understand that you are qualified for the position.
And I know that I did read, Robert, that you stated, and I think this is a very clear message of what's to come should you be elected treasurer for Métis Nation of Saskatchewan. You said that you would work for the people, not for the president. And I think right now, in my personal opinion, President Glenn McCullum certainly isn't working in the best interest of the Métis Nation of Saskatchewan. He's sort of being self-serving. And you also said that, you know, and I quote, to put in simple terms, your job is to let the citizens know who has their hands in their pockets. So that's very important in regards to transparency and accountability.
Well, you know, if I'm elected treasurer, and it's always been with any position that you're elected to, is you're elected by the people, and your oath and your commitment is to the people that elect you. And for me, it's working hard and working in cooperation with the Métis citizens of this province. And part of that job is, if I'm elected president, I have no problem to list all the properties we own or lease, and list all the projects that have been funded by Métis Nation of Saskatchewan on behalf of its citizens. I will detail all the financial investments that have been undertaken on behalf of the Métis citizens of this province. I will publish the salaries of all the PMC, including the executive, and the salaries of all department heads and senior staff. I will ensure that the Métis citizens of this province benefit from their own money, and I will conduct myself with honesty and integrity. I believe that we work for our people, and I believe our people have a role to play, and part of it is that they have to ensure that we practice that accountability and transparency. But in order to hold us accountable, they need that information, and that's kind of what is one of the missing pieces within this current government, is that information is very hard to come by, and the minutes haven't been posted in a timely manner, and the financial audit has not been posted in a timely manner, and there's really no time during the MNLA to question the finances of this government. But my commitment is to the Métis citizens of this province, and I will provide accountability, and I will provide transparency, and my commitment is to work for each and every Métis citizen
Well, let me ask you this question, because there's a couple points I want to bring up here. One, you said the minutes have not been posted in a timely manner. Isn't it 2019 the last time the minutes was actually published as far as accuracy on financials?
I think it was March 2019 when the last minutes from the March 2019 PMC meeting was published. We've had a practice here where PMC members have signed a confidentiality agreement. So the information that we get from meetings is very limited, and it's not enough to really hold anyone accountable. And I think that's part of the problem is that we need to restore some of the processes in our democratic system. And part of it is when they do post a financial audit, the majority of our Metis citizens don't understand a financial audit in the format that is posted. But there hasn't been time during the MNLA to question the finances. And there has been no time taken to actually explain the workings of the financial administration department and the line-by-line items that have been posted in terms that people can actually understand. We need to be able to ensure that our citizens understand the finance, that our Metis citizens understand where their money is coming from and where they're spending that money and who is authorizing those expenditures. So we need to go back to the practices that we had prior to this administration where we can assist our citizens in understanding their own finances in terms of the projects that they have funded.
Well, let me ask you this, because you're speaking about bringing transparency to the people, which will be refreshing and needed. However, we do know that if for some weird reason, some strange reason, Chartier is elected, or for some weird reason McCollum stays in there, you will have opposition in that, and we're basing that solely on both of these individuals' history of not being transparent on the financials. And if you look at what happened with the MNC, I cannot understand for the life of me why Clem Chartier was not prosecuted, or somebody at the MNC was not prosecuted for what happened during what started out as an audit but ended in a financial review, and that complete mess, which showed clear concern and misappropriation of funds. There was documents that had different font types that clearly appeared to be tampered with, financial documents. And so we do know that if you come in as treasurer, that you will, if McCollum or Chartier is in there, you will indeed face opposition to being transparent. So my question would be, how would you handle that? And I know that you said that you're there to work for the people, which is great, but you're going to have a lot of pressure coming from whoever, if it's Clem Chartier or McCollum as president, from them, and some of the poison that's still on the board right now will definitely be opposing the transparency. How would you deal with it?
Well, I come into this election, I have experience. I have been an elected official in terms of being an area director, and I do have experience working with the provincial Metis Council. And the people around that table, the majority know who I am, and they know the values that I represent. And I don't anticipate that whoever is elected president will attempt to pressure me to untoward, and I'll use my influence at the table to argue and to encourage and support good governance.
That's awesome, Alexandra.
Yeah, I mean, along those lines too, I know being a treasurer of any organization is, in my view, one of the most important positions you can hold, and my fear would be based on going back to Clem Chartier running for the president of Métis Nation of Saskatchewan, a prime example in the 2020 MNC Forum. Clem Chartier admitted that he wouldn't call an AGA or because an overdue election would be called and he'd be ousted. So this is just my personal opinion that Clem Chartier really is holding, he's not concerned about the Metis people at all by, just not holding a board of governors or AGM because I'm going to lose control. So if he was to get in, God forbid, as president of the Métis Nation of Saskatchewan, he would bring those type of characteristics, and it would be a hard road or even a harder job being treasurer when you have an individual that has a long track record of not being transparent or accountable to Métis citizens as it is. And I know you have 20 years experience in financial administration, and you have a degree in administration, and then a diploma in journalism and a diploma in housing, and you've got a proven track member. So, and I hear what you're saying, that you pledge to answer all of the questions as treasurer openly and honestly. And I think one of the things that have to happen, and like you and Timothy had discussed, there has to be a timely posting of minutes and a timely posting of financials. And for a lot of the elders or a lot of people that are not financial savvy, they need to be in layman terms where the average person can understand what all these numbers and a balance sheet or what have you says. So I appreciate you saying, when you did make the comment, that people, not the average person, understands what all these big numbers on. And I think as treasurer too, you may have to educate people, and like you said, be open and honest and be available if somebody approaches you and says, I don't understand what these dollars or how they were allocated to.
Well, I think that you make a good point out, Alexandria, is that part of this process is communication, and we've been lacking that communication in terms of discussing some of these issues with our own Métis citizens. And there is going to be a need to detail some of these finances in layman's terms, and that is a process that I will work towards, where each and every Métis citizen will understand the financial situation within the Métis Nation of Saskatchewan, and each and every Métis citizen will understand who we're paying, and the salaries that are being provided to our senior staff. I'll list all the properties we own or lease, and all the assets that we own or lease. And when I say we own or lease, that's the Métis Nation of Saskatchewan citizens. They own all these properties, and they are responsible for the lease on all these properties. And they have that responsibility to ensure that the information that they're given will provide accountability and transparency. And part of it is that communication. And, I have an advantage in that I'm not a politician. I've worked the majority of my life, and so I don't have that need to play political games. I just want to be honest and open with our own citizens so that they understand and in understanding they can hold us as a government accountable.
And you know what? That's awesome. That's really awesome. As a matter of fact, before we did the interview with you, we reached out to a few people in Saskatchewan, and we tried to find something bad about you, any kind of complaint, any kind of anything. And the feedback that we got about you was that you're an honest person. And so, you know, that's pretty good to get that type of feedback from a lot of people out there that we reached out to. And so we will say that we were happy that there was actually no controversy surrounding you at all that we could find. And so, and we did dig, but we couldn't find any. And so I believe that you would make a great treasurer. And I believe that you have it in you to fight against anybody trying to oppress your ability to be transparent for the people.
Well, you know, I appreciate those kind words, and but it's I think it comes with working hard and having a good set of values that I believe in. And I believe in honesty. I believe in integrity. I have great admiration for people of character. And in Saskatchewan, we've had a number of individuals who, to me, are heroes. And it kind of puts in perspective this whole election when you talk about somebody like Tristan DeRocher, who, with his group walking with our angels, he walked 635 kilometers and did a 44-day fast to try and change the situation in terms of the problems of suicide in the north. And on April 30th, a bill was passed in the Saskatchewan legislature that acknowledged that need for cooperation and treatment from our provincial government. The young man who's truly a hero, and you know, you have Justice Murray Sinclair. We have our heroes, and the politics and the election are important, but it's also to keep those issues in perspective. And you know, running as treasurer is I hope to kind of emulate some of those character traits that our heroes have demonstrated time and time again. And that goes back to Louis Riel and Gabriel Dumont and Jim Sinclair. And we've had a lot of great leaders. And I think that we'll do well as long as we follow in the path of those values that they put on display. And I think it's important for the Metis citizens of this province. We've gone through a tough 4 years in terms of our own internal politics, but there are individual heroes that we can kind of look to, and hopefully we can come through this election where there will be better days ahead, where we can have that hope for the future. There's, you know, lots of money involved with the Metis Nation of Saskatchewan at this point. It hasn't always been so, but it's to kind of keep that in perspective. Is that, you know, one of my concerns is the agreements that we signed in order to get this money back in the days of Jim Sinclair and Malcolm Norris, Jim Brady. You know, there was always this conversation about how much money from the federal government or provincial government, because we don't want that money to influence our decision making.
But what happens is, and this is a question I would like to ask you, we do know that the M&S has given themselves pay raises to where they over $100,000 a year now. And from what we have heard, is this happen in what appears to be a deficit. Now, my question would be, as treasurer, would you be willing to put forth the idea that they retract some of that pay raise? And we don't expect anybody to work for free, but we think the amount of money that they've raised, given themselves, is absurd. And when you look at all the problems that the Métis are facing in Saskatchewan, and Métis that are homeless, hungry, and so I just think that it's not right, and I think somebody needs to come on there and say, hey, maybe we should retract this pay raise and lower our yearly salary.
Well, my position is that I would work to repeal those pay raises. I think that the perception of how they were given out and how they were implemented, and the secrecy surrounding those pay raises have put a doubt in how ethical our government is. And I don't really believe that those pay raises were necessary. A lot of our PMC members are actually working full-time jobs and collecting from the Métis Nation of Saskatchewan as part-time work. And so I think that the whole process of giving raises and adjusting salaries has to be looked at. Like, I would advocate an independent commission that would go out and consult with our Métis citizens and take a look at the salaries that are comparable and put together a salary grid that could be presented to our Métis Nation Legislative Assembly. And the salary grid would not only include members of the PMC, but also our senior bureaucrats. It's always been a question this last 3-4 years as to who we're paying, how much we're paying, and there haven't been many answers. I think it's unfortunate. I really believe it's unfortunate that those cash bonuses were given out. It's unreasonable for a government to give out $34,600 in cash bonuses and raises to each individual regional director at the bare minimum that costs Métis citizens of this province over $622,000. And money that could have been well spent in other areas. And so it's unfortunate, but it also is kind of telling in that I believe it shows the character of this government, and it's not helpful. That money could have been used to fund a treatment center up north, or a suicide prevention program up north, or a women's shelter in southern Saskatchewan. There's a lot of different issues that could have used those finances. Something as simple as single parents who need daycare. They could have been helped, or seniors with rent supplement. There's a lot of places that money could have gone, but it went into the pockets of politicians. And I do have concern with that, and it's something where I would work hard to repeal those raises.
And you know what, Robert, along that lines, because I know that that cash bonus happened in December 2020, so in my personal opinion, I would call it a Christmas bonus for the individuals that were the recipients. And you have to wonder that, okay, if they had all that extra money to throw around and gift themselves a Christmas bonus, I would only hope that anybody that needed a Christmas hamper, or a food hamper, or an elder, or clothes, a toy drive for children, or suicide prevention, addiction program. I could only hope that all the needs of the Métis citizens of Saskatchewan in those categories had been fully met, any kind of COVID relief, and then they had the surplus money. So, I mean, as if I was a citizen in Saskatchewan, I'd be questioning, okay, you're giving yourself a Christmas bonus. You know, did everybody get a Christmas hamper this year, or what have you? And like you said, it shows the character of the individual that is at the helm, and that's a character of corruption, and it's a character. It's not a characteristic of being a true Métis individual, because we look after our own, and we've sort of. It seems to me, the current government, meaning under President McCollum, they've lost their way. They're off the path where they've become colonialized, and the people don't matter anymore. And I'm under the firm belief that everybody should have a seat at the table. Everybody should have a voice, open discussion, because there's a lot of lateral violence, a lot of lateral damage, people being intimidated for wanting to speak truth or asking legitimate questions. And that's why there's a lot of fear-mongering out there, where everyday citizens don't want to ask about these items, because, you know, it's a very small, tight clique of the people that are on the top of the pyramid in their icy tower, and the everyday citizen is afraid to ask for honesty and transparency, and you get ousted. And a prime example of that is that the MLA where Marianne Morin was trying to speak, and there was a bunch of politicians. She was never offered a chair. They cut her microphone. She had to use a blowhorn. So, you know, we just passed May 5th honoring murdered and Indigenous missing women, and to have our own Métis men treat women like that. And I mean, she's the treasurer, and for them to be abusive to her. We seen the video. It was hard to see the video where you know, all the politicians were there. We heard them laughing, making fun of her, just really derogatory character. And that's not how Métis men treat Indigenous women. And again, that's another character flaw of Glenn McCollum, and I think it's disgusting.
Well, you know, you kind of raised a few points there. There is a lot of misogyny within the Métis Nation of Saskatchewan, and it is in large part by older men like myself who of my era, where we haven't progressed to the point where we've embraced those concepts of respect. We're still reacting to trauma from residential school or through day school, or we've gone through that era of racism and discrimination, and it's impacted us. But those are no longer excuses for misogyny. And I think part of that process is that if we need to be able to move beyond that, and move beyond that older generation, and move more into a more progressive time. The rest of the country is moving ahead without us, and we need to discontinue those practices where we disrespect women or each other. And it's to always kind of learn that lesson, is to respect people, and you expect that in turn you'll be respected. But no, it's not good where we mistreat people and mistreat women. It's not good, and you know, it's difficult. It's a difficult conversation, but I think even within our community, it's a conversation that needs to be had, and we all need to try and espouse and practice better values.
Amen. I believe that 100%. And I would like to say and give you got anything else?
Well, I had one more question, because a lot of people have been inundated us with opinions, questions, and a lot of people are upset with one of the campaign slogans that Glenn McCullum is using is the hashtag Metis Rising, and they're upset, saying that, you know, Metis people, they stand proud and tall already. There's no reason to have to rise. So for Glenn McCullum to use that hashtag Metis Rising, some people are sort of taking it in a negative way, and I was just wondering if you had an opinion about that.
Well, Métis people are proud and independent people, and I don't think we need to rise. I do think we need to address some of the issues, and slogans really don't do that. So I think it's, you know, I think it can be looked at in a negative light where it seems like we're laying down, but we're not laying down. Métis people never lay down, and we proved that in Saskatoon. So it's, you know, we're willing to do what's right, but we need that leadership that can role model those values that our children need to follow. To this point, that hasn't happened.
Yeah, and I think too that if you're already standing tall and walking proudly, like you said, you're not laying down, so you've already risen. So the only thing that McCullum, I believe, is referring to that's rising there is a few people's bank accounts. But and keep in mind, it's a few people that are actually benefiting financially off of the money that's supposed to go to all Métis citizens in Saskatchewan and not just to a select few. And that's why it's so important to bring in transparency and to have someone like you sitting as a treasurer, because then we can have some accountability, some honesty, and we can actually get, like you said, like you're referring to, this $34,000 per person. Instead of this few people getting these $34,000 bonuses or whatever, that money could have made it out to the Métis people. And once we get honesty and transparency on that board, more money will get out to the Métis people.
Well, it's, I think you're absolutely right. Like, I know a lot of the Métis people within our community, and 90% of them are hardworking, honest, just really good people. And you're right, and within our nation, the Métis Nation of Saskatchewan, a very small number of people are really benefiting, and a very small number of people are controlling the organization. And I believe, like, even within our current provincial Métis Council, that the majority are really good people, and it's difficult to turn down 34,600, and especially if you see your colleagues taking the money as well. But we have a few people who are controlling the organization, and they are not necessarily.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt this interview because I want to point out this fact, that although we do believe Robert was a good candidate for treasurer and he will be transparent, I feel that his comment right there that you just heard, and you can rewind it, where he's saying that I believe that they are good people. They just they felt it difficult not to screw over the Métis citizens of Saskatchewan. Now, if we were just talking about them taking Robert's money, it would be one thing. But we're talking about these people who gave themselves bonuses and pay raises from the money that should go to the Métis people of Saskatchewan. So this is disturbing. We understand that he honestly feels this way, that these people are actually good people. But Robert, they are not good people, man. They screwed the Métis people of Saskatchewan. They gave themselves bonuses. They gave themselves pay raises. It was wrong. It doesn't matter that they seen other people doing it. So if just because other people are screwing the Métis citizens of Saskatchewan, it makes it right in your mind that they participated too, because it's kind of hard not to do that. So that is the sickening part of this interview. But however, even though we do disagree with him on that, he would still be an improvement to what is in office right now. We absolutely believe that. But it's just, this is the one thing that just really irritates me with this interview with Robert. Back to the interview, folks.
Métis citizens of Saskatchewan, but they have power and control. And in many ways, that $63 million that we received over the course of this year has contributed to kind of a lax moral character in that the money has influenced people's decision making. And but I believe that with this election is that we'll get back to normal. We'll elect people who will provide leadership with integrity. And I'm a strong believer in our Metis people, and I'm an optimist, so I'm kind of looking forward to May 29th, and we'll see what happens when the votes are counted.
And as we're going to wrap it up here in a few minutes, we would like to ask you if you feel like we've missed anything, or if there's any points that, or anything that you would like to say to the voters in Saskatchewan that you feel like we have not covered in the interview so far. You can go ahead and say that now.
Well, I think that like as Metis people in Saskatchewan, we have an opportunity and an obligation to not only our children but also our grandchildren in ensuring we have a government that is accountable and transparent. And May 29th is election day. May 14th starts with the early voting. So I would encourage every Metis citizen to go out and vote. I believe that we have a brighter future and a more future with a more accountability, more transparency, and where Metis citizens and their rights can be advocated for in a good way. And I believe that Metis should be responsible for running their own government. I don't think we need to bring in people from the outside to tell us who we are as Metis people or how to run our own government. But you know, we're strong, resilient people, and I'm very, very optimistic that we will have transition to change.
Yeah, and I would like to tell you that you know, anytime that you feel like you want to come back on the show before May 29th, if you feel like you got something else you want to say, you invited back, you can come back on anytime you want to come on. That's not a problem.
No, all I want to say is that hopefully that you know, Métis Nation of Saskatchewan will break away from, you know, the grip that's been with the lack of transparency and accountability for the last 4 years. And I know myself, being a member of the Manitoba Métis Federation, I mean, I see the struggles amongst my own people in Manitoba, and it's like a poison or a virus of corruption that seeps into other organizations. And I agree with you that people that are not Métis people should have no business sticking their nose in and having positions of power in our government structure. I'm a firm believer of Métis people handling their own business, and we don't need anybody else, you know, holding positions. There's a lot of organizations that have outsiders that are giving direction, etc. And I certainly agree with you in that, and hopefully that now is the time where Métis Nation of Saskatchewan can break away from the chains of corruption, the lack of transparency, and really begin to thrive for the benefit of all the Métis citizens in Saskatchewan.
Yes, absolutely. But I have faith that we'll elect people with integrity, and it's really, I think, the people, the top 4 or 5 people who are controlling it. So I'm hopeful that maybe by the end of this election that things will have changed enough where people are not following the money, but actually following what's the right thing to do for our people.
Exactly, and the dictatorship of McCollum's coming to an end. That's for sure. I do not foresee him being reelected. And so I think the people's had enough, and I think they're gonna let their voices be heard on May 29th. And we'd like to thank you for joining the show. And we will be using the picture that you sent us in the show.
And we wish you good luck on the campaign trail, and we wish you good luck on May 29th.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate it from both of you.
Thank you very much.
It's fun. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, that was our interview with Robert Lafontaine. He is a candidate for treasurer for the Metis Nation of Saskatchewan. We don't agree with everything he said there, as I've noted and pointed out several times, but we do agree that he would be transparent, at least, which is what we're not getting from the current people that's running the Metis Nation of Saskatchewan. So now we're going to move on to our second guest,
Melvina Goulet.
And with her, she's also a candidate for treasurer. Same position as Robert's, going for treasurer. She's a candidate for treasurer in the Metis Nation of Saskatchewan. And you're going to want to listen to her interview. And again, she's another great candidate for treasurer. There's nothing that she said that we actually disagreed with. And so, she is a candidate, and she would also be transparent, we feel, and much better than what's in there currently.
And Melvina Goulet wanted us to reiterate, and this is what she believes. She believes that the hashtag Metis Rising that Glenn McCullum is using on the campaign trail, she does not agree with Metis Rising. She says, I've always stood tall and proud, so I've no reason to rise. She wanted to make sure that we mentioned that's how she felt about that.
And yeah, and so if you're already standing tall and proud, you're already risen, McCullum, you're not transparent. And actually, your little slogan there that you're doing when you're rejecting the media, and we're not the only media that's reached out to you that you rejected, that you just won't talk to. You're not talking to the people, but you're taking money and putting it into billboards. I wonder how much of that money was that you spending on billboards was actually should have went out to the Metis citizens of Saskatchewan. And your time is over, that's for sure. And we definitely hope that Marianne Morin will be president of the Metis Nation of Saskatchewan, because that is the only way the Metis citizens of Saskatchewan will be treated fairly and equally, because they will not get that with Clem Chartier, and they're not getting it with Glenn McCullum. So again, I would like for you to take a listen to her interview.
And I just want to add, before we go into her interview, it speaks volume when a presidential candidate, the media reaches out to you on multiple occasions, and you just are not wanting to participate, or you're just leaving these requests unanswered. So that to me does not speak of transparency, and you got to wonder why.
What's he hiding?
What is he hiding, and why doesn't he want to speak to the media? So you're going
to the people.
That's
the
right.
media represents the people, so he's not speaking to the people.
He's not willing to engage. I don't know, and this is my personal opinion, if he thinks he's above everybody else, but it sure doesn't look good if you're inaccessible to your people and to the media. So now we're going to go into Melvina Goulet's interview.
Right, and to add to what you just said, we make shows for the Métis citizens everywhere, all across the board. And so to understand that when a president of an organization does not speak to the media, and we're not the only media that he's refused to speak to, that's like you said, that speaks volumes. And maybe he's afraid that we got some information and we're going to ask him a question that he's not going to be prepared to answer, and so, or he just don't want to answer. But his time is over. If you want more money and fair treatment for the Métis citizens in Saskatchewan, McCullum's got to go. Chartier, that would be a completely bad decision. Please elect Marianne Morin. And here's our interview with Melvina, so take a listen.
Hello, Melvina speaking.
Hey, Hey, Melvina, how you doing? This is Timothy and Alexandria and Metis Warrior. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Happy Mother's Day.
Happy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're excited to have you on, and I want to ask you a question to kind of kick it off, because you are a candidate for treasurer of the Metis Nation of Saskatchewan, correct?
That's correct.
And so the question that I want to ask you is this: do you feel like at any point in time when it comes to financial records for the Metis citizens of Saskatchewan, that there should be dark areas or gray areas, or do you believe in 100% transparency for the financials?
I believe in 100% transparency.
Amen. Yep, I do too. And right now we don't have that in the Metis Nation of Saskatchewan. And the way that our show is structured is, as Metis Warrior Media Group, usually citizens will contact our show when they have complaints about their organizations, and then we'll reach out to the organizations. But I can tell you, in the last 2.5 years, not one time has McCollum been willing to pick up the phone, return a call, or even open up to any of the questions that his own citizens have as we call to find out the answers. There is zero transparency as far as we're concerned, because there's a lot of what ifs, or where's the money going. We don't really know where all this money is going, and we need 100% transparency for the citizens, the Metis citizens of Saskatchewan.
That's correct.
And Melvina, for our listening audience, could you tell them where you're from in Saskatchewan so they can get a little bit of a background on you?
Well, I reside in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, which is like the third largest city in our province, right? So, and I believe we have the second largest Métis population, or the locals in the province as well.
Right.
And I'm a member of Local 7. I'm the vice president of Local 7. And in the last 3 years, our local has not been granted a chair at the MNLA, because we're not recognized by the area director as a local who is not compliant according to her rules that she's set. So we have 3 locals in the city. One of them is Local 7, Local 109, and Local 269. So those are the 3 biggest locals within our region, and all 3 of us have not had a seat at the MNLA.
Well, that's a shame, because is it because one of the rules is that you got to be non-transparent to be recognized? Because that's the way the game seems to be played. The less transparent you are, the bigger the seat that you can have at the table. And it seems like people that are wanting to be transparent, they just get pushed to the side, or they get the colonial law called on them and removed from certain events, such as in the case of Marianne Moore. And I want to ask you to comment on Marianne's case, but she's been done 100% dirty, and she's actually tried to be transparent, and she's been silenced by the Metis Nation of Saskatchewan. So it seems like one of the requirements must be that you got to be non-transparent to have a seat.
Well, let's hope that, our nation is ready for a change, right? Métis Nation has to be ready for a change. If we say that Métis Nation Saskatchewan is in a government-to-government relationship with the federal government, and the funding they receive on behalf of Métis citizens of this province, then those are public funds. Part of being a government is being transparent and showing what you spend those public funds on, including the salaries you pay your employees and your elected officials, and all the expenses that the elected officials use, right? So that's part of it. provincial government employee in Saskatchewan. I so as a result of being an employee of government, my salary is subject to public information, public disclosure, right? It's not privacy. When an organization or a government has secrets and doesn't fully disclose that, then you're not inviting trust. You're not inviting transparency. You're not inviting disclosure. You create an atmosphere based on distrust. So, perhaps that's not what MNS is currently doing. That's what's out there.
Well, let me just put it this way: the money that the federal government gives these organizations, they only get the money because they're basically getting the money for the Metis in Saskatchewan for their rights in Saskatchewan. So none of that, all that salaries and all where every penny's going should be made public, because it's not their money. They're just representatives and kind of a middleman. They're not God by any sense of the imagination. They're a middleman that's supposed to issue out the money, not hide the money.
That's correct. In fact, they are not even the middleman. They are represented they're elected by the Metis citizens, so they are served the citizens. It's not the other way around. They're not a dictatorship, right?
Right.
So you know what? When they should hold those positions in trust. You should act honestly and with integrity when you're allocating those resources based on the needs of Métis citizens in this province. And that just doesn't mean the people that are card holding. You're getting money for that 100,000 Métis citizens. They need to provide services to all the 100,000.
Absolutely. And I seen when I was getting some information just to familiarize myself with your platform, this resonated with me, and it said a commitment is to serve. And I think what's happening now with the Métis, and this is just my opinion, Melvina, is that the current Métis Nation of Saskatchewan is not serving the Métis citizens with integrity, accountability, and honesty. There's so many gray areas that are going on with the current governing body that it's kind of scary. And I feel, that, like you said, it's time to revitalize the nation, and people have to be ready for this change. And we all know, as human beings, change is not easy for people to accept if they're used to the old ways. It's just easier to keep going with the flow, because change is scary for a lot of people, but I think it's necessary.
I believe it is as well.
And let me say this: when you get in there as a treasurer, and you believe in transparency, you're going to face. All right, look, our hope is that Marianne Warren becomes president, because the nightmare would be if McCollum stayed in office or if Chartier got into office. That would be an absolute nightmare, and I'll tell you why. In those two scenarios, as a treasurer, for someone who believes in transparency, what's going to happen is they're going to oppose that, and I'm basing that solely on their history of non-transparency when it comes to financials. There's very shady past on financials. And so how would you deal with a strong opposition if you had somebody by the likes of McCollum or Chartier in there who is not about transparency, and here you are, a treasurer, wanting to tell everybody where the money's going? How would you handle that situation?
I am, like you, I am really hoping that, you know what, I am one of 4 on the executive, and one of on the PMC. So I am hoping that I won't stand alone, that others will stand up and say, enough is enough. We need to represent our people. We need to stop the violence. We need to stop the bullying. I'm not sure if you went and looked at 2018 MNLA and AGA. Truthfully, that was the first time I attended an event in that type of form. But what I seen there really disturbed me. I was disheartened, disillusioned as to the behavior that people around that table displayed towards Marianne and other women. The misogyny, the lateral violence, the bullying that went on, the name calling. You know, I was so disillusioned by that. These are leaders elected to represent every citizen in our province, who are supposed to speak for the vulnerable people in our Métis Nation, who are supposed to speak for our children, and those children not yet born. Yet this was the behavior they were displaying at that meeting. So, to me, that needs to stop.
Yeah, and we seen that, and we actually did. We had more shows on a different channel, and on this channel, we did recover the issue with Marianne Morin there and what happened to her as she was trying to be transparent and she was being shut down, and literally it was a lot of bullying going on. But my fear here is that there will be no because all right, if you look at the board right now, if people wanted to truly stand up and fight against what is being done, they would have done it. So people are not banding together and fighting for transparency and fair and equal treatment. They're just letting McCollum be a dictator, and they're letting the Métis citizens of Saskatchewan continue to be screwed over, which is exactly what would happen if Chartier got in there. And so, you know, and once you get in there as treasurer, even if you're standing alone, you still have to oppose them trying to silence you, because you know by looking at the case with Marianne Morin, they will definitely try to do that if Marianne Morin is not elected president. If she's elected president, you won't have to worry about that because she is very transparent and very honest, and then we would have a fair organization, and all the money will be going where it needs to go and not being misappropriated.
I agree.
And you know, Melvina, when I watched that clip from 2018, I had to watch it several times to kind of really digest. Like I couldn't believe what was happening, the lateral damage, lateral violence. They wouldn't even give Marianne a seat, and they cut her microphone down, and she had Charlene brought her the blowhorn. I figured this is not how Métis Indigenous women are to be treated. That's not how we're to be treated. And like you said, these are governing bodies sitting at a table. I heard, I don't know who it was on the clip that was laughing at Marianne, and I figured this isn't the way of our people. And I shook my head, and like I said, that video to this day still bothers me. And then you have Will Goudon, his big head on the screen there, doing nothing to chair the meeting. I just figure, like, it's time to get rid of this old boys club. I mean, Métis Indigenous women are important in our culture, and I recommend everybody on that board, everybody, again, I keep saying this, to sit with an elder and maybe go back to basics and find out what being Métis truly is about, because they have no idea. They certainly have no grasp on the concept of kinship, community, and everybody having a seat at the table, being able to speak freely, give their opinion, and have a voice. And right now, Métis Nation of Saskatchewan, and I keep saying this as well, they are a colonial Métis organization where it's not about the people, it's just about the dollar signs. And we heard that McCullum in December 2020 in an in-camera meeting where they gave they passed a motion to increase salaries, and then they tried to hide it. So where's the transparency when you're giving cash bonuses when there's people in Saskatchewan? I know there's a huge problem with suicide, addiction, homelessness. People are hungry with COVID. So then you turn around and you're going to give yourself and the executive a cash bonus. Like, what's that all about?
Well, you know what? There appears to be a sense of entitlement when you compare the MNS government as PMC to the provincial government or even the federal government. It's like comparing apples to oranges. We have land, but we don't own that land as a government. So those belong to the traditional territories of our Métis locals. But they can't tax. They have no tax base. They have no resources. They don't collect money except for what we get from the federal government to utilize for services for our people. Like, look at housing. Housing is an issue in all of our communities. Yet they didn't spend. They got rid of our housing affiliate. They didn't spend all the housing dollars. Saskatchewan has the highest violence, interpersonal violence against women. What are we doing? Yeah, so, what are they doing? In terms of when you look at a government, I work with boards, victim services boards across our province. I volunteer in our locals as well. We go out there and we do that work, and we can say what we need to get paid for doing that. And I think when you're a servant, when you're elected to serve, you need to really look at the money you get and the needs of our people and budget and allocate accordingly. Not say, you know what, we need to get paid $100,000, $150,000, and take 15-20% of the budget. Meanwhile, your citizens are living on less than $30,000 a year. We have a chair who said on an MSA, the treasurer who was put in after they took Marianne out, who said he can't live on $30,000 a year. Like, do you know how many citizens live on that?
Yeah, I do.
There's a high amount. I lived on that with 2 kids and had them in daycare and paid expenses. When you're saying that's not enough, like, we can manage the budget. But I'm a Métis woman. I was, that's part of, we need to budget. We need to take care of each other. That's something they forget sitting around that little square where the executive is up a little bit higher, is that, you know what? You forget that we are all connected. Somehow, some way, we are all connected as Métis people. The kinship, the family, and the systems, and we should be protecting one another. What they have done is attacked one person, which was Marianne at that MNLA and that AGA, and none of the other women stood up because they were afraid they were next.
And to the people,
they didn't stand up,
and to the people listening out there, and to the people listening out there, I want you to understand that that shows the fight that Marianne has in her. Exactly what you're saying, for the people, and she's there to spread the transparency. You're exactly right. She, even though she was standing up, speaking the truth, they were trying to silence her. Then she'd make a great president.
Yeah, and none of them around that table stood with her. Neither neither did the provincial women who sat there, and they had 5 seats at that table. Not one of them stood up and said, "We stand with Marianne." Now that is shameful. That we as women, that women around that table could not do that. What came after that for the next 2-3 years? That was the start of the destruction of democracy in Métis country, because none of them stood up for her. And what they said was that we cannot show you the letter she resigned because there will be a court case. And what they also said was, Marianne never once come to us until here. Well, of course not. Our Constitution says the MNLA and the AGA are where we should go when we have an issue. So that's what Marianne was doing. But they silenced her, they didn't give her a seat at the table, and they didn't allow her to talk.
Yeah, and you know what, Melvina, that's disgusting behavior by people, Métis. I'm not even going to call them men, because that's not what a man does. It's just degrading, lateral violence, lateral damage. It's disgusting, despicable.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Qualifications.
And you know what? That's you know what? You do not do that to women. For myself, when I sat there and I watched as an observer of that MNLA and continued to see that abuse, not only from the people around the table that were elected, but also the speaker, Will Goudon, and the other one from Manitoba. The disrespect they had for people sitting around the MNLA, but also for others, was pretty obvious.
Yeah.
So to me, I probably wouldn't have ran. I wouldn't have considered it if I didn't see that behavior continue and had not been approached by some of my fellow people at the local level. It's just wrong. That is not who we are, and that we shouldn't allow this behavior.
You're absolutely right. And Melvina,
never gonna.
exactly, Melvina, I see a lot of Marianne Morin in you, and I think what I really like about you is your vision. And you said your vision is for our Métis Nation is that we work to achieve transparency, fairness, equality, equity, inclusion for all citizens, and we must work as a team, utilizing our strengths again to revitalize our nation. And I think these individuals in 2018 moving forward don't have a grasp on the concept of respect, honor, and integrity. They showed that clearly there, so that our children and our grandchildren will inherit a legacy of hope, accomplishment, and pride. We don't want them to inherit a legacy of trying to silence people or speakers of the truth. And it's just disheartening. And I'm going to read a statement that you wrote, and I quote, "It's not about me, it's about keeping the eyes on the prize, which is ensuring that services and supports are in place for our children to come, as long as the grass grows, the water flow, and the sun shines." I think that really says a lot, that we've got to look to the future of our people, and the current governing of Métis Nation of Saskatchewan just seems to want to squander the pot of gold at the end of the Bannock Trail there, and who cares about tomorrow or our children, our youth, and that they just want to give themselves these cash bonuses. And I think with your qualifications, your experience working in government, I mean, you have a good handle on, you've got to be transparent in all ways, especially if you're a treasurer, which is a highly, highly important position in any organization.
it is about the people that we serve.
And you know what? It seems like currently now Saskatchewan, McCullum, I mean, and people like that that are currently in place, it's really about serving themselves. And like I said, again, they forgot what it really is to be a Métis person, where we sit kinship community and discuss things as a circle, an equal circle. It's just that so many of the people like Chartier, McCullum are on ivory towers where they think they're untouchable and everybody else is beneath them, and they can run around and, they don't follow the Constitution. They can again use the Constitution like toilet paper because it doesn't hold any meaning to them. And it's just, I really think that they're colonial puppets, really, of the federal government. That's my opinion. And change has to happen. And like I said, we have to put our people first, and we can't be bought and sold. So maybe if you could tell our listeners too more of, should you be elected as treasurer, what's one of the first things that you would do?
I guess one of the first things I would do, and it's like any time I've ever started a new position within my career, I've gone into the position and look at what has happened in the past, do a review to figure out where are we at now. What has been done? Was it done appropriately? And, once you do the assessment and the review, present it to everyone else, finance committee, or, present it to first assess it myself, do an analysis, and then make a plan. Present it to the PMC and in the finance committee, and go from there, right?
Right. So that
we need to take stock as to what has been done, do a review, and then develop a plan.
That sounds good.
And look at what are the outcomes? What are the outcomes that we want to achieve, and develop plans and steps as to how we're going to get there.
As your capacity, if you were to be elected as treasurer, do you feel that all kind of financial, any kind of monetary spending should be posted for all the citizens to view anytime they would like?
Definitely. Once those expenditures have been approved and passed, they should be available for every citizen, just like within the provincial and federal governments. Those expenditures are available, right?
Right.
To the citizens of Canada and Saskatchewan.
Let me ask you this. Would you be in favor of supporting reduction of the pay raise? Like you said, they've given themselves over $100,000. The pay raise equals over $100,000 a year. So would you support lowering that to say even half that, $50,000 a year? Because I don't know why they have to make $100,000 a year. It makes no sense to me.
Well, I would be in favor of that.
Yeah.
I would be in favor of that. And you know what? And anybody to say that, you know what, this is in line with all government employees, that is not correct. Not every government employee makes over $100,000. I've been working with government for 29 years. I don't make $100,000. So, and I work hard at my job, and I believe I do my job well, and I ensure that services and programs are in place for the citizens that we serve in our province. So, can they say that? No. We have pay equity within this province as well. Like, our Métis Nation is not there. Those salaries are not sustainable considering our budget. If you look at, like, from what I happened to glance at 2020, the budget that year, the governance of M&S was in a deficit. So if you're in a deficit, why are you giving yourself a raise?
Yeah, yeah.
That is not good governance.
Because they don't care about the people.
Planning. Pardon me?
I said because they don't care about the people. See, by giving themselves a raise, think about it, okay? They're making over $100,000 a year. If you cut that back to $50,000 a year, then that's $50,000 less per person that could go and be put on Métis families that really need help, instead of going to these people. The money don't come from the federal government to just benefit people sitting on the board. That board's supposed to be equal and fair and do the right thing by its people, and not be there to try to get rich. That's not how it works.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah, because you know what? If you're going to, in December 2020, if you're going to give yourself a cash bonus, I could only hope that since it's Christmas time, that every family that needed a Christmas hamper got one, and anybody that needed a place to stay in the cold weather had a place to stay, and they were, given money for their, any kind of people that were on substance abuse. So I'm hoping that, prior to giving that cash bonus, all of those needs of the people had been met first.
I would agree. I would agree as well too. But when you're looking at spending public funds, one of the key things when you spend public funds and allocate public funds is that board members or elected officials should not be getting a bonus, right? So there's no such thing as giving yourself a Christmas bonus. I can see when you have extra funds available, then you would be giving it to the people that you serve.
Exactly, and like you said, they were in a deficit.
Yeah. So, in my mind, it's always like my biggest. The reason why I'm running is because I have a commitment to serve our citizens and improve the lives of our citizens, to ensure there's transparency and honesty and integrity, right? And to be accountable. Those are words that so many of them are putting down as part of their platform. But what does that truly mean to them, right?
What?
And do those meanings are being transparent means that as government we have nothing to hide. And we're going to establish ourselves as a credible and honest government by providing full disclosure of expenditures, activities, and programs. So, but, you need to be able to do that. Same thing with accountability, right? It's making sure that you are building trust. And if you don't have the trust of your people, then you don't have transparency and accountability and fairness or equality.
That's right.
And I think that's something we really need to work on.
And there's a lot of people in Saskatchewan that will be listening to this show. So if there's something that you feel like that you want to say to the people, to the voters out there, please go ahead and say it. If we left something out, if we missed something, please go ahead and say what you want to say to the voters.
And you know what? For myself, accountability is to take ownership of the decisions and actions that I make, and that we must do better in accepting responsibility and ownership to ensure we give clarity for those decisions we make for our citizens. And I do not believe that MNS has taken accountability or ownership for the decisions and actions they have made. What they have, and when they are questioned, there's anger ask, what's happening to the funds that are allocated for the needs of our citizens in this province? You know, we have inherent rights. We have Indigenous rights. We are recognized in the Canadian Constitution. So, and we walk with those. And myself, as a Métis woman, I carry my grandmothers with me in my journey of life. You know, and each and every time that I face that interpersonal violence, that bullying, that lateral violence, they are not only affecting me, they are also doing that to my grandmothers that I carry with me. So the men need to start acting like men and be honorable and ensure that they're taking care of women sitting at that table.
Totally agree with you.
So, in my mind, we need to remember we are connected. I'm going to say that I am a Métis woman, and, you know, it means we are in charge of ourselves. I am not a nationalist, whatever that means, you know.
Mm-hmm.
My grandfather was very clear that he was from Saint Laurent, and he was an Apitaricosan, which is like a half-breed, a Métis man. So I was always proud of who I am as a Métis woman.
Right.
And, and never forget where we come from, and don't forget who your family is, and that we're all connected.
That makes perfect sense, Melvina. Perfect sense.
And we would like to thank you for joining the show, and we'd like to thank you for joining the show. And I hope you and Marianne get elected so that y'all can bring some honesty and transparency to the Métis Nation of Saskatchewan.
And bring the honor back to Métis Nation of Saskatchewan and kick out that old boys club that needs to hit the road, the Bannock bus.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will say that, you know what, the Métis, in all the work that I have done in my whole career, in any community, Indigenous community I've gone into, whether it's Métis or First Nations, the women that are working in front line, the people working front line are the women. Where are the men? The men may be in leadership, but they're not doing the work. It's the women doing the work. They are taking care of the kids. They are working, and they're volunteering in the community. We are the heartbeat of the communities. We're the heartbeat of the family. It's time that we also get up there in leadership and make the decisions that are going to positively impact and change our communities, because we can't afford to keep having our women go missing, our children and our youth dying from addictions and being apprehended.
And we got to realize as Métis organizations, and as a Métis organization, is not a colonial, it should never be a colonial organization. We need to understand that. And Chartrand, Chartier, McCollum,
right.
Man, they're colonials to the fullest. But look, we want to thank you for joining the show, and please send that picture.
Yes, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your Mother's Day. Thank you, Melvina.
So that is you just heard two interviews. The first one from Robert, the second one from Melvina. Both of them running for treasurer of the Métis Nation of Saskatchewan. I hope these interviews served you well and helped you maybe make a decision on which candidate you would like to be treasurer. Of course, I'm partial to Melvina, but Robert would also make a great treasurer, just as well as Melvina would make a great treasurer for the Métis Nation of Saskatchewan. Whichever one of those two that you choose to elect, I can tell you this, it would be better transparency than what you're getting now, for sure, absolutely. And I would love to see fair treatment, equal treatment for all Métis in Saskatchewan. And so I hope you enjoyed this show. We do have a lot of people reaching out to us with other stories, and you know, we just really been super busy, but we're going to try to get more shows out to you. Just be patient. The website, we're still working on the website, believe it or not, but we got other things going on that we're doing. And so, but when the website is released, you'll definitely love it, because I hate being on this platform. I want to be on another platform where we can reach out to even more of y'all. And so I really hope you enjoyed the show, and we'd like to thank Robert and Melvina for joining us for this show. And please elect Marianne Morin for president of the Metis Nation of Saskatchewan. Again, you do not want Glenn McCullum in there. Zero transparency, a lot of questions about what's going on with the money. Clem Chartier would be more of the same. We basing that on all his past experience that we had with him in the Metis Nation. And again, you want somebody that's going to be transparent and do the right thing with the money, and not put that money that's coming from the Canadian federal government into their own personal bank accounts, their own pockets. And you want to get rid of nepotism. And so you want, again, you want fair and equal treatment and full transparency. I hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you. Until next time.